The Chair recognises the honourable member for Mount Pearl Southlands.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll take advantage of the time and bring up a couple of more issues. So the next issue I just want to raise, Madam Chair, is the issue of paid family caregivers. So it's another health issue, and that was a program that was brought in, I guess, by the previous administration, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I believe it was Minister Sullivan was the Minister of Health at the time, if memory serves me. And I thought it was a good program, and I still think it's a good program, because certainly there's lots of situations where, because you don't have the availability in a lot of cases in certain parts of the province of home care agencies and so on to take care of our seniors and persons with disabilities and so on who require the care. And so, when this program was announced to allow family members to be the caretakers, I thought it was a great initiative, and I supported it then, I support it now. The only issue I want to raise, and this is something I certainly have, I know I've raised it with the Minister of Health and Community Services. I sent him a couple of letters on it as it relates to a specific case, and I'm not going to get into the details of that specific case, because it's like anything, all cases, there's usually 3 sides to every story. There's my side, your side, and then something in between is usually what's totally accurate. But regardless of any specific case or not, the point, the issue still remains the same, and that is that under this program, a spouse cannot be the paid family caregiver. Now, I don't know exactly what the rationale is for that. I did receive a response from the department, and basically the only response I got was that the spouse has an inherent, an inherent responsibility to look after the spouse. In other words, you're married, you're husband and wife, you shouldn't have to get paid. You have that inherent responsibility to look after your wife, your husband, in any case. But, and I understand that. And I understand that government don't want to open up the floodgates and have, everybody care, to have all of a sudden 1,000 people putting in applications to say, I want to stay home and look after my wife or look after my husband or whatever. And I guess there's a fear that it could get out of hand and so on. And I understand that. But in the particular case that I had some dealings with, it was a case of a spouse who she was dying. She was terminally ill, and in this case, the gentleman who had been working in Alberta, going back and forth and so on, he ended up having to leave his job to stay home to be with his dying wife, and she has since passed. But the point is, I think, is that, and what I had suggested at the time to the Minister and to the Department, and I just want to put it on the record again here on the floor of the House of Assembly, is that while I understand the rationale and this inherent responsibility for a spouse to look after another, the fact of the matter is, if I had an ailing spouse and my brother, as an example, had an ailing spouse, we could look after each other's wives and get paid for it under that policy as paid family caregivers. A daughter can look after a mother, a sister can look after a sister, and so on, but the husband can't look after the wife or the wife can't look after the husband. You have a kind of a double standard, and the cost is what the cost is. Whether I pay a stranger, whether I pay the daughter, whether I pay the aunt, the cousin, the niece, the nephew, or I pay the husband, still the same cost, no different. So, and of course the issue is, I guess, and what my suggestion was, is that we simply tweak the policy to say that yes, under normal circumstances, we recognize that inherent responsibility and so on, and the policy maintains just the way it is under normal circumstances. However, in the case where the spouse is deemed to be terminally ill, palliative, if you will, by a physician, a recognized physician. So you would have all that medical documentation to back it up. It's not a subjective type of thing. It would be, you know, somebody is terminally ill. In that situation, the spouse could be considered the paid family caregiver. Because think again, you know, we just talked about when I was up speaking before about the cruelty of the whole home, situation where you have one spouse separated from another in a different nursing home because of level 2 versus level 3 and so on. This is another case, you know. Like in the case of this specific case that we had, I mean, here's a fellow working in Alberta. You know, naturally, he needed to be home and wanted to be home to care for his ailing wife who was terminally ill. And I think there's nobody here, if you think about it, if that was your mom and dad, your grandmother or grandfather, if it was you or your spouse, you would want that as well. So, again, I'm not saying that we totally do away with the program or we turn it upside down, inside out. I'm saying maintain the program and just simply put in a provision in policy that says, allows for that special circumstance where where the spouse is terminally ill, as certified by a doctor. You'd have all the proper paperwork and checks and balances and so on. In that case, the spouse could be the paid family caregiver. So I just wanted to put that out there again, and for the minister's ears and the government's ears, as something that could be considered. I've only got about 3 minutes left, and there's numerous things I could talk about. I do want to talk about Muskrat Falls again. I'm glad that the Minister of Education raised that, but 2 minutes and 43 seconds is not going to cut it, so I'm going to defer until I get another opportunity. But I did listen to the Minister of Service NL and talking about the various things that falls under his department, and there's no doubt there's an awful lot of regulations and legislation and so on that does fall under Service NL, and I'm well aware of it as I guess the former critic for that department. One of the items that I raised in the House of Assembly when I was critic and for Service NL never did get addressed by the former administration, and I haven't seen anything really come forward now with this new administration. Maybe it's in the works, I don't know. But we do continue to have issues in this province as it relates to landlord-tenants issues, and issues with boarding houses, in some cases unsafe boarding houses and unsafe apartments and living conditions, so-called slum landlords, as we hear it referred to sometimes. And I know also on the other side of the equation, there are issues and concerns that landlords themselves have, and protections that they require, and things that need to be changed to bring the Landlord Tenancies Act here in Newfoundland and Labrador to bring it more in line with modern times and so on. And it is very important because housing is one of our basic necessities that everybody needs. And it's just not a matter of housing, it's a matter of safe housing. It's a matter of safe housing. Because a lot of times when we're talking about safe housing and so on, we're talking about our most vulnerable people. We're talking about people sometimes who have mental health and addiction issues. We're talking about people with disabilities. A lot of times we're talking about seniors and so on. And we have a responsibility in this province as legislators to ensure that those people have safe living conditions. So it's been a long time that we've been waiting for changes to the Landlord Tenancies Act. It's been brought up in this House of Assembly numerous times. And so I'm hopeful, and I throw it out there to the minister because he's here, he's listening, that I hope we're going to see
Order,
some
please.
changes coming forward in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.